Politicons Book 2, written by Oliver Arnold and narrated by Adam 11 Labs. Chapter 9. Donner Gould stood before an enormous rock. It would become the landscaping centerpiece for his home in the swamps, the crown jewel of this estate. Yes, landscaping. That was his concern. How far I've come, Gould thought with a nod to himself. He contemplated the unmoving object. My mind moves mountains and so do my muscles, he thought and smacked his biceps. After spitting into and rubbing his hands, he finally bent over and hugged the stone. He strained to lift the impossibly humongous rock. Tears in his muscle suit emerged, and bulges of Gould's white, flappy skin pressed through them. The catastrophic failure of Gould's muscle suit escalated with an extreme rump valve outflow. The rock remained in place. Gould stopped, his physique deflated, his muscles dangling limply. At least I still have my home, he thought, and glanced back at his shelter, a collection of crooked sticks stacked together, loosely resembling a child-made tipi. My pyramid, he cursed. Anguish clouded his mind. How were the others faring? Much worse for sure. He hadn't seen a soul since the encounter with the Asoan. For a while, Gould just stood. He noticed a tree with a line of sap running down it. The tree bled. Gould shared the plant's pain. He was at the end of his journey, near death. His existence ended with no pyramid, no eternal fame and glory. An ant scuttled across the bark, but then stopped right in the sap's track. Don't rest there! You're gonna get buried, Gould said out loud, but the critter wouldn't heed the advice. The sap came, and the bug was slowly overrun by the sticky goop. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration overcame Gould. This bug will succeed where I have failed, eternal existence. Gould knew what he had to do. He jumped at the tree and hugged it. Take me to eternity, brother tree, Gould said, as he held his head into the sap. It and the ant seeped into his ear. After 5 minutes and a sticky face, Gould gave up. What was it with his streak of bad luck? It was getting dark, and Gould left. His smile vanished as he returned to his swamp home. The sun set, and a blanket of darkness, bugs, and animal sounds covered the jungle. The Polly shivered from cold and fear. His shabby fire died quickly. He cursed into the dark. You know, I've learned my lesson, he said, pleading with the ether. I'll build your society any way you want. He was granted no reply. Gould finally couldn't take it anymore. He regarded the dying fire, clenched his fists, and then furiously tore apart his shelter to feed the branches to the flames. The momentary warmth, the fleeting comfort, allowed Gould to rest his eyes, hoping for comforting fantasies of golden giants. But this night, Gould had a different dream. He was back in his father's mansion, walking through shiny halls. At the end of the corridor stood a gleaming golden toilet, incongruously placed in the middle of the tropical forest that had somehow grown inside the house. What was it doing here? He cautiously advanced toward it. When he reached the bowl, he leaned over to inspect it. Clear, still water sat in the toilet. Gould's face stared back at him. He jerked awake. What a terrifying dream, though it had at least been a golden toilet. Regardless, there was no way he'd sleep tonight. He huddled up. The moment of comfort allowed him to reminisce on his past, and Gould remembered his introduction to the GM. It had been many years ago, when Gould was still part of a respectably fearsome oligarchy. His uncle had been the one to introduce him to what Gould at the time thought to be a secret society. As a young man with artistic aspirations, Gould had initially resisted. His creative writing was going to change the world, not this group of old men his uncle spoke of in hushed tones. The GM sees potential in you, his uncle had told him one evening, in a voice barely above a whisper despite being in the safety of their gold-plated study. More than your father ever did. The mention of his father struck a nerve. Oswald Gould, business magnate and political advisor, had been a strict patriarch and crushed Donner's artistic dreams with ruthless efficiency. When Donner had tried to explain his slow progress on his novel, his father had scoffed. Creative writing often feels like a lengthy process because it demands a deep level of introspection, Donner had explained, the words rehearsed but heartfelt. It's a meticulous crafting of details and a constant pursuit of capturing the nuances of characters and emotions, making it a complex mental exercise that can't be rushed. essentially requiring a significant time investment to produce impactful work. It's not just about putting words on paper, but about carefully shaping ideas and experiences into a compelling narrative. His father's response had been to throw Donner's manuscript to the dogs. "No son of mine wastes his life on fantasies," he'd declared. "You'll join the business next week." Perhaps that's why Durnard's offer had seemed so appealing, any alternative to his father's golden prison of expectations. Gould didn't know then that his uncle had been caught by the GM in some transgression. Gould could never find out quite what, and had offered his nephew as payment. "Your grandfather fought the GM, you know," Durnard had told him on the night before the initiation. "Tried to expose him for what he truly is, the most dangerous entity alive, but your grandfather failed." "And you're telling me this now? Right before my initiation?" Gould was shocked. His grandfather, a stern and ruthless ruler, had died before Donner was born. "The GM was less powerful then," Uncle Durnard continued, his eyes darting nervously to the windows. "Susceptible to exposure. But now? He'd destroy us all without breaking a sweat." What Durnard didn't mention was that by bringing Donner into the fold, he was brokering his own freedom by offering the GM something far more valuable. A rebellious young man from the very bloodline that had once opposed him. In the weeks that followed his initiation, Donner had begun to despise the constant excess of his wealthy upbringing. The gold that coated everything in his father's mansion seemed vulgar rather than luxurious. The endless parade of parties, high-priced escorts, experimental drugs, and bottomless champagne flutes felt hollow. One night, in a drug-fueled rage, Donner had taken a knife to his gold-plated bedroom, scratching away at the shining surface until his fingers bled. He'd discovered that beneath the gold facade was only more gold. There was no escape from the opulence, no reality to uncover. That was when the GM made his true approach.
"You seek substance in a world of surfaces,"
the GM had said, the voice appearing in Donner's room as if it had always been there.
"I can give you purpose, real power. Not the kind your father wields, that's just money talking. I offer the power to reshape the world."
Gould emerged from his mind. It took him a minute before his eyes sprung to life and he rubbed his face. Back in the jungle. It was unbelievable even to Gould himself who he had once been. But that was decades, no, a lifetime ago. Now those people were dead. Only he and the GM remained. For the longest time, Gould merely sat and stared until the fire was nearly out once more. He stayed as close to the embers as possible, even rolling up into a ball. Not finding sleep, Gould stared off into the black. Suddenly, a glow rose from the swamp. The Asoan's soul. No, it wasn't the location where he had disposed of the man. This glowing aura wasn't even over the murk itself, but rather off to the side in a stretch of thin trees. The animals had grown quiet around the bog. Were they afraid, cowering, or lurking? Did they anticipate the approaching swamp hag that would devour him? The banshee would eat his mighty soul, and the animals would get spoils. After long minutes of waiting, no monsters appeared, but the glow remained. This wasn't luminescent swamp gas either. Gould knew that much. He rose, took all of his courage, and walked toward it. As he reached the glow, it waned. An illusion? What a waste of time. Gould was about to walk back when he noticed a sheen in the mud. A handle, apparently. It was pretty far out, but reachable with a bit of stretching. Gould grabbed a branch as a handhold and leaned far over the murk. With the swamp creatures fresh on his mind, Gould reached deep into the bile to pull. It took multiple tugs and many more curses until he finally unearthed a shiny container, not golden, but still his very own treasure. He dragged it back to camp. Once on firm ground, he snapped the chest's buckles and, with a satisfying smack, flung back the lid. It held a note. "Dear contestant, congratulations on locating this cache. It is filled with your contributions to society. They shall aid you as they aided us." The poly dug into the chest, but the darkness wouldn't allow him to see much. It was filled with hand-sized blocks of sorts. He grabbed one and held it into the glow of his fire. Magnet. It was his soap. "This treasure doesn't help at all," Gould said to himself. He got the soap, but not the irony. He chewed on it, knowing it was made from boiled horses. It tasted bitter. After 2 bars, he stopped. He went on and rubbed himself with it. Gould learned that night the soap wasn't only a magnet for women, but for mosquitoes as well. Furious, exhausted, and cold, Gould dug a hole with his bare hands and feet. He spun 3 times, curled up into it, and closed his eyes. Suddenly, not at rest for a minute, he leaped up and screamed like a tarantula bit him. Gould reached for his back and grasped something off it. Instead of a tarantula, his hand held a giant, contorting centipede. He stared at the raging horror. Then, without hesitation, Gould bit off its head and spat it into the coals. The beast went limp, and Gould calmed. He gazed at the dead, drooping bug with its many legs and hairs, and ferociously devoured it. In the morning, Gould woke to a buzzing. The alarm, too early. "Spittle, send my double to the Senate today," Gould said, but the sound persisted. When Gould reached over to silence the alarm and only felt dirt, he remembered. Gah! The island. He opened his eyes. Sun and bugs entered them. Gah! The alarm still chimed. Alarm. It sounded digital and man-made, designed to attract, not deter. Gould rose, looked in the direction of the sound, and immediately saw the source. A small door built into a tree. Coiled around the door was a plastic snake with red, blinking eyes. Why hadn't he noticed this last night? Gould approached the beast cautiously. It was quite a large snake. The way it was wound about the tree trunk was beautifully implemented, though. The eyes were huge. Gould wanted to press them. He had grown cautious, though. Last time on the island, when he pressed something buzzing, it stung him. The eyeballs began to pulse with light. He finally collected himself and pressed them inward. The tree trunk's door snapped open. Gould cautiously reached inside and lifted out multiple rectangular items, things he hadn't seen in a long time. Printed books. "Thank you. Those are great," Gould said out loud. Without delay, he began tossing pages into his fire. He appreciated the thoughtful addition of fuel. As he ripped, his eyes passed over the work's title. "Survival Techniques." He halted. Perhaps read just a single line, 1 paragraph at most, he thought. While reading for one's amusement was forbidden under his regime, consuming books for knowledge had been punishable by death. Gould caught himself looking over his shoulder before opening the book. Reading. Yes, he remembered now. Running your eyes across the lines. Did you start on the left or the right? He found the correct way. It took some strain, but in no time at all, Gould had learned how to build a shelter and make fire from coconut husks. It was exciting to transfer skills from something as boring and stupid as letters to his mind. His interest was piqued. He explored the other works in the collection. Eternal Words, his fitness book, was among them. He opened it for the first time. It contained fun pictures like a comic book. Not too many words here, good. Gould tried one exercise and nearly died. The next book was Makeup with Donner Gould, Reshape into a Babe Magnet. And there, his finest work, On Setting the Gould Standard, an autobiographical work that had been ghostwritten by someone he didn't know. And then he found Plato's Republic, written by some old-time politician, it seemed. Perhaps this contained long-forgotten techniques of intimidation and suppression? Gould attempted to understand what the resistance was seeking to teach him here. Why was he bothered with social studies? After all, he didn't understand his own body, and it functioned just fine. You've heard the 9th chapter of Politicons, Book 2, written and produced by Oliver Arnold.